The winter I turned 74, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years, sitting by the living room window, watching the snow fall slowly over Maple Street. It had been a quiet December, far too quiet for a woman like me, who once lived for Christmas. I don't mean the gifts or the glittering decorations. No, for me, Christmas had always been about the moments, small, fragile, heart-melting moments that stitched themselves into memories you can't escape even if you try. I was alone that evening, wrapped in an old knitted shawl that had belonged to my mother. The house felt colder than usual, not because the heater was failing, but because some winters simply carry a different kind of cold, the kind that settles inside your chest and refuses to leave. A soft wind brushed against the windowpane, making it hum with that familiar winter sound. I closed my eyes. And without meaning to, I slipped back into a Christmas I had never forgotten, the Christmas that changed everything. The one memory I still revisit when the world feels too quiet. It was 1968, and I was barely 13. We lived in a small wooden house on the outskirts of our little town. A house that creaked when someone walked upstairs, a house that smelled like pine wood and cinnamon in December, a house that carried laughter through its walls like music. Back then, life wasn't easy, but it was warm. Warm in the ways that matter. My father, Daniel Carter, was a tall man with kind eyes, always smelling faintly of old books and peppermint. He wasn't rich, not even close. He fixed radios for a living and played the harmonica when he couldn't sleep. And my mother, Evelyn, was the sort of woman who could turn the simplest thing into something magical. She made the best hot chocolate in town, always serving it with a gentle kiss on the forehead as if blessing you with sweetness. But that Christmas, something was different. I remember waking up on December 22nd to the sound of muffled voices downstairs. My parents were talking, though trying their best to keep quiet. I tiptoed down the stairs, holding onto the railing because the wood always squeaked in the same spot near the bottom. "I've checked everywhere, Evie," my father whispered. "We don't have enough left. Not even for a small tree." "It's okay," my mother replied softly, but her voice wasn't steady. "Christmas has never been about the tree. We just need to make it special in another way." I didn't understand the weight of their words back then. I didn't know how money had been slipping through their fingers faster than they could catch it. But I knew my father's face. And that morning, he looked like a man trying to hide a storm inside his chest. That afternoon, he came to me with a forced smile. "Hey, kiddo," he said, ruffling my hair, "how about we create our own Christmas magic this year?" I nodded eagerly, not wanting him to see the disappointment I was trying so hard to hide. I loved Christmas trees, the sparkle, the warmth, the glow in the room at night. But I loved my father more. He handed me a small wooden box. "Come on," he said, "we're going to the backyard." The backyard, that place was my childhood kingdom. It wasn't big or beautiful, but it was mine, filled with muddy footprints, chalk drawings on old stones, a rusted swing set, and a crooked fence my father always said he'd fix, someday. But what made that backyard magical wasn't any of that. It was what my father built there when I was 6, a small wooden playhouse, painted light blue with white shutters. My dream house, he called it. As we stepped outside, the cold air bit at my cheeks, but my father's presence always made me feel safe, even in the harshest winter. "We may not have much," he said, opening the wooden box, "but I think we can make something beautiful." Inside the box were old Christmas ornaments from when he and my mother were young. Tiny, faded, some cracked, some missing their hooks, but they were ours. He handed me one shaped like a bell, chipped on one side. "I bought that for your mother when we were 19, he said, looking at it as if holding a precious part of his heart. Together, we decorated the little playhouse. We wrapped string lights around the roof, even though some bulbs flickered. We hung ornaments along the windows, letting them sway gently in the winter breeze. We painted stars with white chalk on the wooden door. And when we were done, my father stepped back and said with a proud smile, 'Maybe we don't have a tree, but we built a Christmas of our own.' That night, we sat inside the playhouse with a small lantern glowing between us. My father played the harmonica, and I hummed along. Snow fell softly outside, and for a few hours, the world felt perfect. But the Christmas I would never forget didn't arrive until 2 days later. Christmas Eve. The roads were covered in snow, the kind that sparkles under streetlights too beautifully to be real. My father left early that morning, saying he had to run an errand. He kissed my forehead, promising he'd return soon. But hours passed. Morning became afternoon. Afternoon became night. The playhouse lights glowed gently in the backyard, but the magic felt dimmer with each passing hour. My mother tried to stay calm. Tried to smile. Tried to distract me with stories and warm blankets and cinnamon tea. But every time the wind blew, she looked toward the road, hoping, praying. When midnight approached, I heard her on the phone, voice trembling. "No, he hasn't come home yet. Yes, I know the roads are icy. Yes, please, if someone can go look." I had never seen my mother scared before. I didn't know what fear truly was until then. I curled up in my playhouse, staring at the lantern, wishing I could make him appear with just a thought. Minutes felt like hours. Snow kept falling, heavier and heavier, as if trying to bury the night. And then I heard footsteps crunching through the snow. I ran outside barefoot, the cold slicing into my skin, but I didn't care. My father was walking toward us. But something was wrong. His hands were inside his coat, his shoulders stiff, his face pale. And yet, he was smiling. He bent down, hugged me tight, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, kiddo." It wasn't until we got inside that I saw what he was carrying under his coat, a small Christmas tree. Not a perfect one. Not even a big one. A tiny, uneven tree that looked like it had been cut from the edge of a forgotten forest. He set it down gently, brushing the snow from its branches. "I traded my old radio," he said softly. "The one your grandfather gave me, but I thought, maybe this is worth it." My mother put her hands over her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. She wasn't crying because of the tree. She was crying because the man she loved had given up one of his most precious possessions just to see his family smile. We decorated that tree together, using the same old ornaments from the wooden box. The lights flickered. The branches drooped. The star on top kept leaning to one side. But it was the most beautiful Christmas tree I ever saw. Because it wasn't bought with money. It was bought with love. And love, real love, is always the most expensive gift. That night, after we opened the little homemade presents we had made for each other, my father did something he hadn't done in years. He lifted me gently and placed me on his lap, holding me the way he did when I was little. You know, he whispered, one day, you'll grow up, and maybe you'll forget things. But I hope you never forget that no matter how hard life gets, Christmas will always remind you of one thing. What? I asked, looking at him through sleepy eyes. That miracles don't always come the way we expect. Sometimes, we have to be the miracle. I didn't know why those words made my mother cry. But I would understand years later. The next morning, Christmas morning, my father didn't wake up. He had passed away quietly in his sleep. The doctor said it was exhaustion, stress, and the cold. But my mother believed he used the last bit of his strength to bring home that little Christmas tree. To give us one final memory. To give us one last miracle. For a long time after that, Christmas hurt. The music felt too loud. The lights felt too bright. And the silence in our house felt endless. But as I grew older, something changed. Every Christmas Eve, I would walk to the backyard and sit in front of that old blue playhouse. The paint had faded. The lights no longer worked. The wood had chipped with time. But every year, I felt him there. Felt his warmth. Felt his gentle voice in the winter air. And now, as a grandmother, sitting by my window in the quiet of another winter, I still remember that night as if it were yesterday. The cold wind. The snow. The tiny Christmas tree that leaned to one side. The last time my father held me with tired but loving arms. People think miracles are loud, flashes of light, grand gestures, impossible events. But the miracle I remember was simple. A father's love. A worn-out man walking miles through snow so his little girl could wake up to a Christmas tree. A memory that never fades, no matter how many years pass. I looked outside my window again, watching little flakes of snow dance slowly to the ground. The streetlights made them shimmer, the same way they shimmered back in 1968. Maybe that's why, even at 74, I still leave a small lantern glowing in the backyard every Christmas Eve. Not because I expect him to return. But because hope never really leaves us. Because love, once given, doesn't disappear. Because miracles, real miracles, live inside the memories that shape us. Tonight, as the wind hums softly against the window, I whisper the same words I have whispered every Christmas Eve for 60 years. Thank you, Daddy, for my miracle. And somewhere, in a place I cannot see, but deeply feel, I know he hears me.